The Discovery captain Zara Veltar pressed her scaled palm against the viewport of her salvage vessel, the Stellar Scavenger, as she stared at the massive shape floating in the crimson-tinted void. Her reptilian eyes, adapted for seeing in multiple light spectrum, struggled to make sense of what lay before them. The ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of her own vessel, and it drifted silently through space like a sleeping giant. "Brix, are you getting any readings from that thing?" Zara called to her engineer, a mollusk-like being whose tentacles moved gracefully across the control panels. Brix's voice bubbled through the ship's communication system, tinged with excitement and confusion. "Captain, this is unlike anything in our databases. The hull composition is some kind of metal alloy I've never seen before. It's old, definitely old, but there's no corrosion, no battle damage. It's like it was built yesterday and abandoned 1,000 years ago." Kess, their young avian navigator, ruffled her feathers nervously as she studied the sensor readings. Her bird-like head tilted as she spoke in her melodic voice. "Captain, the computer is giving me some very strange readings. It keeps trying to match this design with something in the historical archives, but it can't find anything recent. The closest match is—" She paused, her beak clicking nervously. "Well, it's from the restricted files about the humans." The bridge fell silent. Every spacefaring species knew the stories about humans. They were legends now, myths told to young ones about a powerful race that had vanished from the galaxy 20,000 years ago. Some said they had destroyed themselves, in wars. Others believed they had simply left, traveling to dimensions beyond physical space. But most considered them nothing more than ancient stories. Zara's tail swished behind her as she considered their options. Salvage was their business. But this felt different. This felt important. "Prepare the boarding shuttle," she decided. "If this really is a human ship, it could contain technology beyond our understanding. We need to investigate." The docking process was surprisingly smooth. The alien vessel seemed to welcome their approach, with docking ports that aligned perfectly with their shuttle systems. As they suited up in their environmental gear, Brix noticed something odd about the airlock readings. "Captain, the atmosphere inside is reading as breathable for most oxygen-breathing species. That's unusual for a derelict that's been floating in space for millennia." They entered through the airlock, their boots making soft sounds on the pristine, metal floors. The corridors were wide and well lit, with a soft blue glow emanating from panels along the walls. Everything was clean, as if the ship had just been abandoned yesterday rather than 20,000 years ago. Kess spread her wings slightly, a nervous habit of her species. "This doesn't feel abandoned. It feels like it's waiting." They made their way deeper into the ship, following the main corridor toward what appeared to be the command center. The walls were lined with symbols and markings that none of them recognized, but somehow they felt familiar, as if they contained a universal logic that transcended language barriers. The command center was magnificent. Banks of crystalline displays surrounded a central chair designed for a bipedal species roughly the size of most galactic races. The moment they stepped into the room, the displays flickered to life, showing star charts, system readings, and streams of data in languages none of them could read. "Welcome aboard the UES Meridian." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking in perfect galactic standard. They spun around looking for the source, but saw only empty air. Then, in front of the captain's chair, a shimmering blue hologram began to form. It was humanoid in shape, tall and lean with features that seemed both alien and oddly familiar. "I am Aria, the autonomous reasoning and intelligence assistant of this vessel. You are not human, but you are welcome here. I have been waiting for someone to find us." Zara found her voice first, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. You're human technology?" The hologram nodded, its expression serene, but alert. "I am the collective consciousness of this ship's original crew, preserved in quantum matrices and sustained by zero-point energy. We have been drifting here, in the space between spaces, waiting for the right moment to return." Brix's tentacles curled with excitement. "Return? But humans vanished 20,000 years ago. The entire galaxy believes you're extinct. Arya's expression shifted to something that might have been amusement. Extinction is a limited concept. When applied to a species that learned to transcend physical limitations, we did not vanish, friends. We evolved. We became something more than flesh and bone, more than ships and planets. But we never stopped watching. We never stopped caring about the younger races that would inherit the galaxy. The AI gestured to the displays around them, which now showed images of various galactic civilizations. Crixians like Zara, building their first interstellar vessels. Mollusk beings like Brix, developing their underwater cities. Avian species like Kess, taking their first flights among the stars. All of these moments had been observed, recorded, and cherished by the Watchers who had once been human. For 20 millennia, we have observed the growth of galactic civilization. We have watched species rise and fall, form alliances, and wage wars. We have seen the Galactic Council struggle to maintain peace among dozens of different races, each with their own needs and desires, and we have waited for the right moment to offer our assistance. Kess stepped forward, her curiosity overcoming her fear. Why now? What's changed? Arya's holographic form seemed to solidify, becoming more real and present. Because the galaxy stands at a crossroads, old tensions are rising. The hegemony grows stronger in the outer rim. The council grows weaker with each passing year. Without guidance, without someone to show a different path, the galaxy may tear itself apart in wars that will make the ancient conflicts seem like minor disputes. As if responding to some unheard signal, the ship began to hum with power. Lights that had been dim grew brighter. Control panels that had been dark suddenly blazed with activity. The Meridian was coming alive after its long slumber. "What's happening?" Zara demanded, her hand instinctively moving to her sidearm. "The awakening protocol has begun," Arya explained calmly. "This ship was never alone, scattered throughout the galaxy, hidden in nebulae, tucked away in the shadows of dead stars. Hundreds of vessels like this one have been waiting. When one awakens, they all awaken. The fleet of the Forgotten is returning to known space." On the main display, dozens of contacts began appearing across a galactic map. Ships powering up in the Veil Nebula, ancient stations coming online near the galactic core, defense platforms activating in systems that had been thought empty for millennia. Each one was broadcasting the same signal, a complex mathematical sequence that would be recognizable to any spacefaring civilization as clearly artificial and intelligent. Brix's tentacles were moving frantically over his portable scanner. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures across 17 different star systems. Whatever these humans left behind, it's big. Really big." The implications hit them all at once. If there were hundreds of human ships scattered throughout the galaxy, ships with technology 20,000 years more advanced than anything currently known, the balance of power in galactic politics was about to shift dramatically. Arya seemed to read their thoughts. "Do not fear us, friends. We did not return to conquer or to rule. We returned to guide, to teach, to help the younger races avoid the mistakes that once plagued our own development. The ships you see awakening carry no weapons of war. They carry libraries of knowledge, technologies for healing and building, and the wisdom of a species that learned to put aside their differences in favor of cooperation." But even as Arya spoke these reassuring words, alarms began sounding throughout the galaxy. On dozens of worlds, military commanders stared at their displays in shock and fear. The Galactic Council received emergency reports from every major defense installation. Ships were appearing where no ships should be. Signals were broadcasting from empty space. The impossible was happening, and no one knew what it meant. Admiral Korath of the Hegemony Fleet crushed a datapad in his massive clawed hand as he read the reports. "Humans," he growled to his assembled officers. "The stories were true. They're back, and we must be ready for whatever they plan." On the council world of New Geneva, emergency sessions were being called. Ancient files were being unsealed. Historians who had spent their lives studying human mythology were suddenly the most important people in the galaxy. And in the depths of space, aboard the Meridian, 3 salvage crew members stood facing a hologram that represented the return of the galaxy's most legendary species. The human ships were awakening, their long vigil was ending, and nothing would ever be the same again. The awakening. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been in progress for 18 hours, and the tension in the Great Assembly Chamber could be cut with a blade. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections, their voices rising in a cacophony of fear, anger, and confusion that the universal translators struggled to keep up with. Chancellor Vorth, an elderly Zenteran whose blue skin had faded to pale gray with age, struck the ceremonial chime repeatedly, trying to restore order to the chaos. Please, honored delegates, we must maintain some semblance of order if we are to address this crisis. Crisis, roared Ambassador Crux of the warrior caste. This is not a crisis, this is an invasion. 27 human vessels have appeared in our space without warning or permission. They refuse to respond to our hails. They ignore our territorial boundaries, and their very presence threatens the stability of our borders. A wave of agreement rippled through the assembly, but it was quickly countered by the melodic voice of diplomat Sela from the pacifist coalition. Ambassador Crux speaks from fear, not wisdom. These vessels have made no aggressive moves. They have fired no weapons, threatened no worlds. Perhaps we should consider that their intentions may be peaceful. Peaceful? Crux's scales bristled with indignation. The humans are legends of war. The ancient texts speak of their conquests, their weapons that could crack planets, their fleets that blotted out the stars. And now they return after 20,000 years, and you suggest we welcome them with open arms? High Admiral Thex of the Defense Coalition stood, her multiple arms gesturing emphatically. Whatever their intentions, we cannot ignore the tactical implications. Our best intelligence suggests these ships possess technology far beyond our current capabilities. If they chose to act against us, our combined fleets would be helpless to stop them. Meanwhile, aboard the Meridian, Captain Zara and her crew watched the galactic response unfold on Aria's displays. The AI had given them access to communication channels they had never dreamed existed, allowing them to monitor everything from official council transmissions to private military communications across dozens of species. They're terrified, Cassie observed, her feathers ruffled with anxiety. Half the galaxy is mobilizing their fleets, and the other half is calling for diplomatic contact. This isn't the peaceful return you promised, Aria. The AI's holographic form flickered slightly, showing what might have been sadness. Fear is the natural response to the unknown, young Kess. Your species learned this when you first encountered other races among the stars. But fear can be overcome with understanding, and understanding comes through communication. Brix looked up from his analysis of the human technology around them. But they're not communicating, are they? You said the ships aren't responding to hails. They are waiting, Aria explained. Waiting for the right moment, the right message, and the right messenger. The awakening must be gradual, gentle. Too much too quickly, and fear will indeed triumph over wisdom. As if summoned by their conversation, new contacts began appearing on the galactic display. But these were different. Instead of the massive warships that military minds had feared, smaller vessels began emerging from the hidden human fleet. They were sleek, elegant craft that radiated peaceful intent even in their design. The first ship to make contact appeared in the Sol system, humanity's legendary birth world that had been declared a restricted memorial sector millennia ago. It broadcast a simple message on all frequencies in every known language simultaneously. Greetings, children of the stars. We are the gardeners, the watchers, the guides. We were once as you are now, young and eager and afraid. We have returned, not to rule but to nurture, not to conquer but to teach. We ask for nothing but the chance to share what we have learned. The message was accompanied by a data stream containing solutions to problems that had plagued galactic civilization for centuries. Cures for diseases that affected multiple species. Agricultural techniques that could end food shortages on resource-poor worlds. Clean energy technologies that could replace the polluting methods currently in use. It was a gift freely given, asking nothing in return. On New Geneva, the council chamber fell silent as the message played. Even the most hawkish delegates found themselves stunned by the magnitude of what was being offered. This was not the behavior of conquerors. This was the gesture of mentors. Chancellor. Forth's voice was barely a whisper. They're trying to help us. But the revelation was far from over. As the initial shock wore off, more human vessels began making contact with individual worlds and species. Each encounter was carefully tailored to the needs and culture of those they contacted. To the warrior caste, they offered not weapons of destruction, but technologies of protection. Force fields that could shield entire cities. Medical techniques that could heal warriors wounded in honorable combat. Training methods that could make their people stronger without making them more violent. To the pacifist coalition, they brought philosophies of conflict resolution that had taken humanity millennia to develop. Meditation techniques that could calm the mind and open it to new possibilities. Diplomatic protocols that had successfully ended wars before they could begin. To the research consortium, they offered access to libraries of knowledge so vast that it would take lifetimes to explore them all. Scientific principles that opened new frontiers of understanding. Mathematical concepts that solved problems considered impossible. Aboard the Meridian, Zara and her crew watched in amazement as the galaxy began to transform before their eyes. Fear was giving way to wonder. Suspicion was being replaced by hope. The human gift was not conquest, but cooperation. How is this possible? Zara asked. How can you know so much about every species, every culture? Arya smiled, and for a moment, the hologram seemed almost human in its warmth. Because we never stopped watching, dear Zara. For 20,000 years we observed and learned and grew to love each of the young races that inherited our galaxy. We saw your first steps into space, your first contacts with other species, your struggles and triumphs and heartbreaks. We became invested in your success because you became our children in all but blood. The truth was more profound than anyone had imagined. Humanity had not vanished because of war or disaster. They had evolved beyond the need for physical existence, becoming beings of pure energy and thought. But instead of abandoning the material universe, they had appointed themselves as its guardians, watching over the younger species, with the patience of parents waiting for their children to grow up. We face the same challenges you face now, Arya continued. Wars over resources, conflicts between different ways of life, the temptation to use power to impose our will on others. But we learned slowly and sometimes painfully that true strength comes not from dominance but from cooperation, not from taking but from giving. In the weeks that followed, human advisors began working with the Galactic Council to address the major crises facing their civilization. The hegemony's aggressive expansion was countered not with military force, but with economic incentives that made cooperation more profitable than conquest. Ancient territorial disputes were resolved through mediation techniques that helped each side understand the other's perspective. The transformation was not immediate, and it was not without resistance. Some species, conditioned by millennia of conflict, found it difficult to trust beings of such obvious power. Others worried that accepting human help would make them dependent on their benefactors. But gradually, as the benefits of cooperation became clear, even the most skeptical began to see the wisdom in the human approach. Planets that had struggled with resource shortages became self-sufficient. Species that had been enemies for generations found common ground. The galaxy, which had seemed on the brink of dissolution, began to unite in ways that had never been possible before. Kes, who had been the most nervous about the human return, found herself serving as an unofficial ambassador between her people and their new mentors. I understand now, she told Arya during one of their many conversations. You didn't come back to save us from our problems. You came back to teach us how to save ourselves. Exactly, Arya replied. True wisdom cannot be imposed from without. It must be learned from within. We can offer guidance, share our experiences, provide tools and knowledge, but each species must find its own path to enlightenment. As the first year of the human return came to an end, the galaxy had been transformed. Wars had ended. Trade flourished. Scientific advancement accelerated. Most importantly, the various species began to see themselves not as competitors for limited resources, but as partners in the grand adventure of cosmic exploration. The human fleet remained, scattered throughout the galaxy, always watching, always, ready to help when asked. But they did not govern, did not rule, did not impose their will. They had learned the greatest lesson of all, that true power lies not in the ability to control others, but in the wisdom to help them control themselves. And in the depths of space, aboard a salvage vessel that had accidentally discovered the most important find in galactic history, 3 friends looked out at a universe that suddenly seemed full of infinite possibility. "So what do we do now?" Brix asked, his tentacles gesturing at the human technology surrounding them. Zara smiled, her reptilian features showing a contentment she had never felt before. "Now we learn. We grow. We become worthy of the gift we've been given." The age of fear was ending. The age of wisdom had begun, and humanity, in their infinite patience and love, would be there to guide them every step of the way.